Hello and welcome to Shay Zasaa and Zasaa Zooms In. I'm back today with three people that you have met previously. I'm here with Gillian, GK, with Wole, and with Karin.
Thank you.
Now, Karin said thank you. Now today, we are talking about strength and vulnerability. Now, Karin and I had a conversation about this. You may or may not have seen it yet. We had a conversation about this, but we didn't feel that we had fully got there. And I thought it would be nice to have other people involved in the conversation, and particularly a man. So Wole has stepped up. Thank you, darling.
That's all right.
And we're going to talk about strength and vulnerability. So I think I'm going to hand over to you, Karin, first, to just start us off. Like, why is this so important to you? What is it? Etc., etc. And then we can go from there.
Okay, from a difficult start in life, I was very vulnerable when I felt very vulnerable and naive when I went out into the world. Walking into motherhood, again, incredibly vulnerable, all with very negative connotations. I got involved in art, which is a place where I study, where I investigate life, and my investigations have brought me to the conclusion and continue to bring me to the conclusion that in order to live a good life, one needs to be authentic. And in order to be authentic, you must be vulnerable. And so I began to see vulnerability from a different perspective. I see it now as a place of strength rather than a place of difficulty.
Okay, I want you to define vulnerability because you gave it a definition that blew my mind the other day. What is vulnerability?
It's letting go of the person that you think you are, and letting go of the person that other people think you are, and becoming authentic.
Okay.
And
Gillian, I can see you are raring to go.
Yeah, no, because I'm just learning about, as a black woman, I have to go there. Because
I can't believe you're a black woman.
Because, I grew up with, the reputation of black women being strong. My mother, was an incredible woman. She held down the home, cooked, cleaned. She had a career. She worked in a bank, incredibly long hours, but she still took care of the family. My father was ill. He was mentally ill for, quite a few. He had quite a few episodes. So she was taking care of him as well, and taking care of us and holding the family together. And that's how I grew up, with this incredible woman. And so that was my frame of reference, that women are strong and not vulnerable, because vulnerability puts you in a position where you're vulnerable.
Yes.
Where you can be taken advantage of, maybe.
Yes, that's a better way of putting it. And as a woman, that we have built-in vulnerabilities. I mean, in the popular culture at the moment, there's a lot of talk about, women being unsafe walking home, women being feeling physically threatened. Almost every time you're out in public, you're aware of your surroundings and the threats that may be, about. I said to my son one day, who's 6'3", because he's my son, I said to him, he was going out late at night one day, and I said to him, it's quite late, be careful and everything. And he looked at me and said, have you seen me? And I thought, whoa, he steps out in a different world, where he steps out, he went to California, Los Angeles, and my niece, who is American, was saying, it was really interesting in this same conversation. She was saying, it's really interesting. The other day we were walking down the street, and all the guys, the big guys were like, they were like, yeah, you're built. We went up, it was just like a different, so he moves differently in the world by virtue of his size and being a man. And so I grew up aware of all that. And so I grew up with this, don't be vulnerable, show strength in whatever situation you're in. And then I was giving a speech one day because I was part of Toastmasters. I trained as a barrister, so I was trying to keep up my speaking abilities. And so I joined Toastmasters, where you give speeches regularly. And we were supposed to, and you prepare speeches and you give a speech about, you know, something that happened to you, or, you know, something like that. And so, and there's a competition where you speak for 5 minutes. Somebody asks you a random question, and then you speak on that question for 5 minutes. And the person asked me, what's the worst thing that's ever happened to you? And she was my friend as well. And I thought, I mean, you know, with friends like you, because the worst thing at that point that had happened to me was that I got divorced, which was really personal. And I thought, but I have to be authentic and not sort of avoid talking in this group about this vulnerable thing. And so I just decided there and then that I was going to be vulnerable and speak from the heart about being divorced and what it was like. And I won Best Speaker that day.
Wow.
And so it taught me that vulnerability has value.
Yes.
Because it leads also to authenticity. As you said, in order to be authentic, you have to be vulnerable. And that's how I learned that.
And I think in order to connect, because you were vulnerable, you made those connections with the people, and they felt that.
Because before that, I used to say, oh, I don't do vulnerable. I used to say to people in relationships, friendships, I'm like, I don't do vulnerable. I'm not doing, if you're expecting me to tear up, that's not going to happen.
But you see, it's interesting because you are assuming that vulnerability is tearing up. Do you understand what I mean? I think it's
well, showing your soft underbelly.
Yeah.
Which that can manifest.
It could, yes, it could.
Which could manifest itself.
And I think that's how a lot of us see
up.
vulnerability,
Yeah.
like something that is almost that we shouldn't show because it makes us look weaker than we are, or it makes us appear like we could be
or
weak.
it's for me it's not just you know, like I said, soft underbelly. So it's not necessarily that it might make you weak, but it sort of makes the other person know something about you that maybe you don't want them to know about you for whatever reason.
Well, you see,
because maybe they see it as a weakness and they may be able to use it against you, so that makes you vulnerable.
Yeah. Okay. Wole?
Wow. Okay, so look, I'm a man. Right?
I never. I'm
a man.
I am a man. Okay, and so the way we process things when it comes to vulnerability is a little different to how women do it, and I think it's natural. I know that before I got married, my strength lay in who I was, what I did, what I was wearing, where I'd been, my life experiences, and that. But once I got married, it changed. I don't know why. I don't know how. It just changed. And I had a certain super strength came over me whenever I was with my wife or was with my child. It became different. It was totally different. I thought, hold on. So now, if I felt I had this super strength because I'm protective of my family, of my people, what happens when I'm not with them? Because honestly, I kept on thinking about it. So now, my wife is not with me, my child's not with me. Am I now not strong anymore? Am I not
vulnerable?
Am I not vulnerable? That's the word for me. And I had to think about it for a while. I was thinking, why am I even thinking about this now? It only happened because some people came into my life that I knew I had oversight over, and I had to be well, a little stronger for them. I had to present a stronger front for them, a better front for them. Mm-hmm. Now, there's something that I have this thing, my brothers, we call it the imposter syndrome, where you feel you have to be someone else to present the right front to wherever you are. And my brothers came to the conclusion that of all three of us, I was the only one that did not have it. I thought, No, I do it too. I do it. So men do that a lot. So we say it, we speak the speak, we walk the walk, we talk the talk. But in reality, we are just as vulnerable. So I would always try to present my best foot. That's what we do. That's what we do. But in trying to find, in trying to get to discover who I really am, I found I have to be vulnerable. I have to ask myself, what do you think of me? How did I handle that? I'm asking my wife, oh gosh, do I want to hear the answer to this? How did I handle that? I'm asking my daughter. My daughters, they're a force. They're a force. Especially my number 2. In fact, all 3 of them.
All of them.
They're all a force. Because from each of them, I got a totally different perspective. And I mean, when I embarked on doing that, I was a little fearful that they will lose respect for me and they won't see me as dad anymore. But you know what? It's changed. It's changed the dynamics. And they see me more as dad. The more vulnerable I became to, listen, how am I looking? Or did I handle that okay? Or how was that talk I gave? And they felt a lot more like I am being dad. And they keep saying now to me that, listen, my friends, whenever they come round, they wish their dad was a bit more like you. They get stuck in.
But you see, this is authenticity, isn't it? And I think it shines through. When you're being authentic, you can't hide authenticity.
No.
And
You
of course,
can't-
like
you
you
have to
said,
fake
you
it.
can't get to authenticity without vulnerability. So whilst they don't know that it's vulnerability that's going on here, what they're saying, that's exactly what I was going to say. Whilst they don't know it's vulnerability that's going on there, what they're saying is authenticity. That's why they're saying, I wish my dad was more like that. I wish this whole thing of putting on a facade of I'm strong, nothing moves me, it's not human. Do you know what I mean? And then in the end, whilst, yes, there's certain situations when you have to be strong for people, I think in the end, what people want is to know that you're human too. You know what I mean? And that comes from the authenticity, which comes from the vulnerability, which, and I've always seen vulnerability as a strength, personally.
Fantastic. That's where I was going to say, I want to interject that vulnerability is actually one of the strongest strengths that you can have if you are able to be vulnerable. So you can be yourself wherever you are.
Yeah, I'm still working on that.
We are all.
Yeah.
Not only you, not only you.
But I think
Trust
it's
me.
important to make a distinction between resilience and vulnerability.
Resilience. Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
because I think that a lot of the young people today struggle with resilience.
They don't have it.
Yeah, it's my experience is
So-
a lot of them don't have it.
Resilience in that.
Are we responsible for that though? Because
Yeah, probably.
I remember it's always the mother's fault. Ask the parents.
I think
But I
social
think
media has a part to play.
But
there.
I think,
Big part.
as parents, I certainly remember with my one, when they're young, you just don't want them to get hurt or to be or to struggle in any way. I mean, I look back on it now and think, I made a mistake there, because one of the ways you become resilient is by going through those challenges and working them out for yourself and stuff like that. And we can't, I don't know whether it was my generation, I don't know what it was, but so I'll give an example of when my son was about 7 or 8. He wanted to walk to school. We lived in Kentish Town. His school was in Hampstead. He had to go on the tube, cross a few roads and do stuff by himself. And, when he first asked me, I was horrified. I thought, there's no way you're going to go to school by yourself. I was, it was a real, I was like, and he wanted it because his friend who lived down the road
Did it.
did it, and he walked to school, but he just lived down the road. And so I thought, oh no, this is terrible, I can't allow it. But I knew it was important to him, and I knew it was important to give him that independence, that resilience, to understand what the world around him, what he can do, what capacity he has. I understood that intellectually, But my emotional reaction was, I can't leave my 7-year-old to go on the tube and cross the road and by himself. I was just like, oh my God, what am I going to do? And then I just thought, but I walked to school when I was his age.
Yeah.
And nothing ever happened to me, and I was happy, and sometimes we got up to no good, and and all of that, and I thought, you know what, I'm gonna let him do it. And so we had a conversation about crossing the road and all of the important safety things. And so from, I don't remember what year that was, but from 7 or 8 he was walking to school by himself.
Whoa.
I think that letting go after you've been entirely responsible for the life of a small person, with every aspect of that letting go makes you incredibly vulnerable at that time. It's a very difficult thing to do, is to let them out into the world fledgling and go, yeah, you're going to be fine. Honest.
I didn't.
And then I'm sitting at the car in the bottom of the road, just checking. He can't see me. It's fine. I hope not.
Okay, so that's actually what I did do. I actually made sure I followed at a good distance, watched him get onto the bus, watched him cross the road, watched him change buses, and actually get on the road to school. Okay, and then I went home.
Yes.
So and I
How long did you do that for?
just the one time.
Okay.
I needed to see it happen.
Okay.
We spoke about it. We done a dry run, but I need to see it happen. So I thought that's part of my responsibility, and I don't think I mollycoddled them. I didn't cottonwool them, but I always say, look, that I did not.
Karen's
not.
thank
God for their
I did
mother.
not.
Thank God
But-
for their
okay,
mother.
man.
Because I always say that, look, your child, you can't shield them from the world. You can't. What you can do is you can build in them a core from which they can answer life's questions from, and that's the best you can do. And then just help them, day to day, if they come to you with
You
their
build
problems.
from what you know. You build from your lens and your experience. My experience of childhood was not good.
Wow.
And so my
Wow.
constant thing was to try and protect my children.
Yeah.
And in the process of that, I probably smothered them.
Yeah.
I did. And I probably did not give them the room that they needed to grow,
Wow. Wow.
for sure.
And
So-
the reverse can also be true, where you had a secure childhood and you feel, and now, it's decades later and the world is different, and the circumstances are different, and you think, oh my God, in my day, because some parents say that, they say, when I say to them, oh yeah, I walked to school in my day, they say, yeah, but in your day, things were safer, people looked out for each other and all of this other thing. And then you think, now we're living in a different world and I can't let my children, I can't, and so I think, because I'm learning a lot about vulnerability through letting go, as you said, because the letting go, obviously I talked about when he was a small child, but now he's 31 and he's engaged to be married.
It's another level entirely.
That 7-year-old
And this
boy.
is in spite of the fact that I love his fiancée. She loves me. She calls me her mother-in-law. She said she doesn't like the idea of, she doesn't like the term mother-in-law and the connotation. So she calls me her mother-in-law. And she's lovely. She's beautiful physically and inside and out. And she's a lovely person. But a lot of times, because it's my son, I have to hold myself. I don't know if it was you I was telling about how I didn't get to see him on his
On his birthday.
Don't laugh at me.
Sorry, we're not
sorry.
laughing.
Your children are coming.
Sorry. It happens already, Karen. I get it. I wasn't invited. I wasn't invited.
You weren't invited
No,
to the...
I was not.
I think there's something that you hit on briefly there that's pretty important as well, that when we were growing up, there was an expectation of community, which I think is very much lost in this generation of people that are growing now. I think perhaps from my perspective, I think social media has a lot, and the development of technology, which in some cases, if it's used correctly, can bring people together, but also isolates people. And there's always this picture perfect, you know, if I'm displaying myself, I have to be. And that's a lack of your authenticity, isn't it? And I think that's where a lot of this lack of resilience comes from, because they're constantly under the pressure 24 hours a day of having to present themselves in a non-authentic way.
So do we fight social media? Do we change social media? Do we or do we just try and guide and steer them into their own use of social media? Because that's where we're having some events on social media very soon, and I know that this is going to come out. The children are really bombarded in our day. Really like it.
I don't think we can fight social media. I don't think we can. I think we have to give them the tools that they need, because social media, this is their day and age, and social media is part of it, whether we like it or
Yes,
not.
I agree.
So I think we have to give them the tools to know how to handle it properly, to know when to get off it, to know what's real, you know. So we just have to give them the tools.
Do you have any one of your children that know when to get off of social media? I can tell you from my experience, my children are on their video games every opportunity they have. They don't self-regulate.
So that's an interesting
Not at all.
question. My number 3 is quite good. So he doesn't, I don't know if it's self-regulation, but what he will do is he knows when he needs to do his work, when he needs to, from that point of view. If he doesn't have any work to do, there's no regulation going on there.
Yeah, there you
But if he has something to do, he knows how to balance his time. Actually, and my number 1 too. My number 2. Well, you know, I don't know. I think, but I don't know if that answers the question, because to be fair, I think all of them, to a certain extent, if they have other things to do, they know how to manage it in that sense. But if they have nothing else to do, then they don't. They're not, unless I'm stepping in.
I would agree
So,
with
yeah,
that
okay.
with my kids, that
Yeah.
if they have to go to work, if they have stuff they have to do, they'll go and do it. But their free time is spent pretty much continually on social
So is
media
mine.
or gaming.
I stopped watching telly. I do social
Oh,
media
your
now.
time, you mean?
Yeah.
Sorry, I thought you meant your son's
My
time.
free
Okay.
time
Yeah.
is used on social media now because it's just more interesting.
Wow.
It's more interesting.
I find myself scrolling on my phone, and I look at the clock and I think, I've been
Hey, time
scrolling
go.
for an hour and a
Yeah.
half. What have I done?
So if we are having this
Exactly.
challenge,
Can you imagine what they will be
Yeah.
facing?
And so it comes down to, you know, the age old, because, you know, when people complain or talk about social media, I say to them, it's just another iteration of life.
Yes, absolutely.
You know, in the 60s, there was, you know, Elvis Presley and his hips. And everybody almost, you know, lost their mind. They were like, oh my God, what is this? The young people nowadays are gyrating and calling it dancing. And everybody was like, oh my gosh, the world is going to pot. And here we are, you know, 40 years later. I'm sure some
else.
parents, if that was all their children were doing, they'd be really happy.
Yeah.
yeah.
You know, so it's all about giving them core values about how they manage their time, how they choose what's important to them. As long as I think somebody said just now that, you know, if they don't have anything to do, that's when they do social media. There's some people, and children as well, or young people who are on social media
Even when they have stuff to
even
do.
when
Yeah.
they have
Yeah,
stuff
that's
to
true.
do. With gaming as well, there was a report some time ago about gaming becoming, you know, young people becoming addicted to gaming and things like that. And so it's all about those core values, about being things we're talking about now, being authentic, being strong, knowing who you are, rocking your own gorgeous, which is why when you look at people, because we as older people, we look at people on social media and you don't think, I don't look at people on social media and think, oh my God, I wish this was me.
Yeah.
I like the caveat you gave there, so that you don't.
No.
Not everyone's
because,
there.
Yes, but this is what I mean. But that is based on, because it's social media now because we're in the 21st century. In my day, there was a different pressure.
Yeah.
We still had that pressure, that peer pressure.
So,
remember, I don't know if you remember when we're going to school in Nigeria, there was a rule about the kind of shoes you could wear, or the kind of things you could wear with your uniform. We had a school uniform, but people would want to
Jazz it up.
make a point by wearing particular types of shoes or doing their hair in a certain way to you know, the same thing people do on social media now. People were doing it in person, so they would wear these shoes that they got from, I don't know, some shop that only 10 people had, and so they made rules and said, oh, everybody must wear Clarks. And even in the Clarks, you would go and get the most expensive one, and you know, in the playground, you're like, what are you wearing?
Jill, have you seen the time?
You know, and so, oh my god. And so it's just, you know, what we're talking about here about having conversations in person. A lot of young people have conversations in person. They just record it on a podcast and then put it on YouTube.
Yeah.
So there's still young people who are still communicating the way we are, but there's that extra
Technology that's coming to it.
bit
Okay.
to it.
We have 17 seconds. We started off talking about strength and vulnerability. We ended up here. What do you think? Is vulnerability a strength? I don't know. I think it's a strength. Let us know what you think. Follow us on YouTube. Take care. God bless you. Rock your own gorgeous.